All right. Welcome to the final installment of the YFP Fellowship. Am I recording? I am. All right, cool. So today is the fellowship wrap up. So we have some people in the live audience. We have some people who are going to be watching this recording at a later date. And today is an opportunity to offer some feedback to us, tell us where we did awesome, where we did terrible, where we have room for improvement. So that way, when we push this out to other pharmacists, young, new, old, they can get as much or more benefit, right? So we're going to make sure that we're improving in every step of the way. But, so the idea here is first things we'll do, we'll kind of meet the Tims. So we have two onlookers here, Tim Ulrich and Tim Baker. I'll explain who they are in case nobody knows. I'm going to ask one of them to impromptu tell you the future of your financial pharmacist without them knowing that they were supposed to do that. We'll ask for some feedback from y'all, and then we'll leave some room at the end for Ask the Tims, where you basically can just ask Ulrich questions about pharmacy, Baker questions about finance, or anything else. But before we jump in, any questions, comments, or concerns that I should know about? Allison raised her hand, so no, yeah, okay, pet the dog. Always a valid move. All right, so here we have the Tims. I'll introduce them one at a time. So we have Tim Ulrich. Some of you know him from the podcast. Some of you know him because he went to your school to talk. You know him as one of the faces of YFP. Program director, Master of Health System Pharmacy Administration, and Professor of Pharmacy Practice at the Ohio State University. Also the co-author of one of our books, A Seven-Figure Pharmacist. Tim Ulrich, do you want to say anything about yourself that I left out?
No, and by the way, I didn't put the V in all caps. I don't know who made these slides. So while I did my residency training there back in 2009, I went to pharmacy school at Ohio Northern and spent about 10 years up on faculty at Northeast Ohio Medical University before coming back to the Ohio State University. So I haven't yet been brainwashed, although whoever made these slides may have that perception of me. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Excited this group joining in as the kind of the beta pilot group of the fellowship. Looking forward to getting your feedback and appreciating you going along with the journey. Hope you got some great value out of it. And I'd be happy to share a little bit more about my journey kind of with YFP for those that don't know it, if we want to get to that more in the Q&A, but I'll stop there, Robert, so we can get on with the show.
Yeah, so the Ohio State, whenever I see like NFL players announcing where they went to college, that's kind of how I hear it. So that's like the only way that it can be played in my head. And then we have Tim Baker, so the founder of Script Financial, which was the predecessor to Your Financial Pharmacist, now YFP Planning, a fee-only financial planning firm dedicated to helping pharmacists and young professionals meet their financial goals. Self-proclaimed winner of the Best Looking Tim contest. So when you ask who wrote these slides, that's how you know. But Tim Baker, do you want to post anything?
I was going to say, I capitalized the in Ohio State, so I guess I can't get away with like saying that I didn't write the Best Looking Tim. So one goes with the other. It's not as funny when there's only two Tims. When there's three Tims on the slide, like there normally is, with Church being our other co-founder, I think it's a little bit more comical. But yeah, I'm Tim Baker. Basically, I run the financial plan, or I try to run the financial planning arm of Your Financial Pharmacist. So my day-to-day is to work with talented people like Robert and Kim and Kelly, who's our other lead planner, and some of the other individuals that support, working with pharmacists all across the country. I think we're in like 38 states at last count. So I'm happy to be here, really interested in this program, this pilot. This is something that I was kicking around in my head for a long time. And Robert said, hey, I'll test it out and see where it goes. And definitely want to find out if this is something that we should pursue more so in the future. With along with all the other things that we do, the books, podcasts, blog, and then, individual financial planning. So happy to be here and looking forward to learning something new tonight.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, she's talking about the other things that YFP does. So I'll actually leave it here for one of you, unprovoked. I'm not going to tell who. Kind of tell us what are some of the other things that YFP has going on that we can talk about.
Yeah, so I'll start off. Tim Baker, feel free to fill in the holes. So what you see up here, and one of the things is we're doing Meet the Tims. You should know I have four boys, and you may hear one or two or three or four of them in the background. So that comes with my territory in the household. One of them, my youngest, is screaming at the moment. Um, so what you'll see here is we've got three books. We started with Seven Figure Pharmacist in 2017, so a little over 3 years ago. Tim Church and I wrote that book. Tim Baker had a heavy influence on helping getting us that book forward. And then most recently was The Pharmacist's Guide to Conquering Student Loans. Don't need to explain to this group most likely, but we kept getting lots of questions about student loan repayment strategies and forgiveness options and refinancing. And I think after the 100th or so presentation that we did on student loans and covering a lot of topics on the podcast, we said, hey, let's put out an A to Z book on student loans, specific to pharmacists and what they're dealing with. Might have to update that, add a chapter or two coming up. We'll see what happens in the new year, TBD. And then actually just coming out end of this month, early December, is Baker's 30 Dozen Principles for Financial Independence. Joe Baker has been teaching personal finance for over 20 years in Arkansas. Really fascinating history of his career as well as his interest in this topic, has influenced so many pharmacists in their own personal financial journey. We've had him on the podcast a couple times. And so I always explain this book as if you're reading, like you're talking with your grandpa and he's just like spewing wisdom, of life experiences. And that's what the book reads like. And I think it's going to be a great resource to the community. So what these books represent really is kind of the education arm of what we do at YFP. So some of you may or may not be already familiar. We do a weekly podcast. So every Thursday we come out with a new episode. I think we're on like 178, 179, something like that. When we started back in July 2017, I think Tim Baker and I set a goal. We heard a statistic that a majority of podcasts never make it to episode number 7. So he said, all right, game on. Let's at least get to episode 8. We did, and we haven't really stopped since then. It's been a great journey, getting to talk to lots of pharmacists all across the country, debt-free stories, questions they have, home buying experiences, real estate, investing, insurance, all the stuff that you guys have been talking about throughout the fellowship. And then we added a little over probably 6 months ago, every Monday, we do a short 5 to 10 minute episode where we take one question from a community member and we answer it. Usually we get a very complicated question, and then Tim Baker's answer is, it depends. And we go on from there and elaborate a little bit further. But that's been a fun journey, and I think helps us really bring and show the value of our financial planning team. And then we do lots of speaking events all across the country. I guess we used to be all across the country. Now we're all across Zoom. So state organizations, national organizations, colleges of pharmacy. We've worked with, I think now about 35, 40 different colleges of pharmacy, lots of different organizations. So one arm kind of education of what we do. And then the second arm, and I'll let Tim Baker talk a little bit more about the financial planning services, but we're really intended to bring one-on-one financial planning and education to our community and to pharmacists that want to pursue that path. And we really believe, I believe from personal experience, that when you get in this type of environment, like you're here with the fellowship and or in a one-on-one environment, you really start to see the education come alive when you can customize it to your personal situation and have that accountability along in the way. And my wife, Jess, and I saw that firsthand working with Tim Baker. And so we're excited to continue to grow those services. So Tim B, you want to talk a little bit more about the financial planning arm?
Yeah, I don't want to mess Robert. I'm going to mess you up. Are we good? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So what I guess the way that we approach financial planning is really, and this is kind of likened to the comment that Tim made, is so much of financial planning really depends on really where you're at and where you want to go. So when we speak or someone asks questions, my first default is, hey, it depends. This isn't something that we necessarily looked at in a vacuum. It's going to depend on a lot of different things that are going on. And I actually find myself more often than not, telling clients it's okay to spend money, even if they're in debt. And that sounds crazy, but given a lot of the, different things that are going on or the strategies that they're employing, this is what's really important. So we really look at financial planning as kind of a lifelong journey. So we really start with when you become a client, kind of similar to what you're doing with Robert in the fellowship, is looking at everything in one spot. So if you guys logged into the client portal and linked your checking, your savings, your credit cards, your student loans, for a lot of people, I know this was true for me. It was like, wow, I've always banked over here, I've invested over here, I had debt here, but to be able to tie that back into one space, that's really powerful. So really going through and figuring out that snapshot of where you're at. I think the second thing is kind of, where do we want to go? So what a wealthy life is for me is going to be different than Tim Albrecht than Robert. So really kind of drilling down into what is the proverbial why, what is a wealthy life for you, and how do we get there? So I kind of make the analogy, it's, a lot of these foundational things are, it's like trying to treat a patient without a diagnosis. Unless we have those foundational things kind of figured out, we don't really know what to do from there. And then from there, it's really putting the building blocks together. So the fundamentals, which is, how you bank, how money flows through your household, a savings plan, a plan for the day. And then all of the other pieces of the financial plan that you probably touched on, whether it's the investment piece, the taxes, the insurance stuff, the estate planning, and then really beyond that. So what are some of these tertiary things that you're like, hey, if I'm adulting, I got to figure this out? For a lot of you, it might be home purchase. I can speak to it. Tim can speak to it. When I bought my first house, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I made just about every mistake in the book. Most financial planners, because they're working with probably people in their 60s and 70s, 80s, they're not going to necessarily help you with that. It's the same thing with student loans. It's just not something that's part of their repertoire. But my belief, and Robert can correct me, is like one of the biggest mistakes of a financial plan outside of engaging with one is home buying decisions. I bought a house that was way too big that I didn't need to furnish. And every time I tell the story, we moved in, we bought a brand new home, and I spent $8,000 on blinds, so we are very deliberate in how we walk through that. Sour negotiation. That's one of the things that I love is, and again, a lot of people, that's not something a financial planner does, but we believe that income is one of the main drivers of a financial plan. It's not the Kool-Aid that you kind of hear in pharmacy school. It's not going to solve all your problems, but income is important, but it's not as important as intention. So we try to put our clients in a position where they can advocate for themselves. But it could be the FIRE movement, car purchase. Hey, I'm getting into real estate investment. To me, my thought is that if it has a dollar sign, we should be able to partner with you and work through it. There's the conventional side of financial planning, and then what we kind of say is the more supplemental piece. And to me, it's really about, our lead planners asking really good questions and getting the heck out of the way. And I think if we're doing that, we're kind of going through this process of discovery, and then we can help on the technical side. But it's really, you guys are writing the chapter, and we're saying, hey, this maybe is outside of your purview. So we always like to go back to what are the things that make you tick? Is it to lead the league in shoes or dining out experiences? For a lot of people, it's not, but that's where we kind of get tripped up. It's to travel. It's to spend time with our friends and family. It's to maybe pivot in our career, maybe retire at a certain time, maybe have a vacation home, just have good memories with the family. And to me, without intention, it's really hard for us to do that. And I think that's the beauty of the financial plan. And that's what gets me fired up. I still have meetings, and I had one of these last week. I don't do as many financial planning meetings because Robert's just a much better financial planner than I am. But I had a meeting with a client that's about to be forgiven on PSLF. And I walked out of that meeting like high as a kite, because it just got me so fired up about how much they've progressed in the year and a half that they've worked with us. And again, it's not necessarily about just the numbers. It's about all the things. One of the things she said to me is, she's like, 2020 has been a up and down year. We've had to worry about a lot of different things, but I haven't had to worry about my finances. And I'm like running through a brick wall because it just fires me up. So that's the things that I think we're passionate about. it's definitely a long-term journey, but for me, we're really dedicated to developing a service that is really tailored to pharmacists. We're owned by pharmacists. 2 of the 3 Tims are PharmD. I'm the only cheesy CFP that's part of the ownership group. So we're really looking to make our service, the best and, best for the pharmacists and go from there. So sorry if I went over, Robert, but that's all I got to say about that as far as Comp would say.
No, we don't really run off time limits here in the fellowship too. So I kind of just talk about things until we're done talking about it. And sometimes Allison stops us because it's time to go to sleep. But that's really how it rolls over here. So we talked about a lot during the fellowship this past couple months, right? So we started back in June with the overview and expectations, right? So that was the one time I think we had 25 people in the meeting. Everybody was able to make it. That was nice. We realized, hey, let's not do this once a month. When it was July 13th before we met again, so much had changed for a lot of you. So much had changed for us, right? In that 1 month, we completely changed planning software. So you guys are the last ones to go on the old Wright Capital. So that was really fun. And we started meeting every other week, right? So we did get organized. We did scripture plan. We talked about life goals, life setting meetings, kind of talking about what the future wants to look like for us. We moved from there to student loan analysis, right? So we had a big education piece on how student loans work, what repayment plans are out there, what options are best in general. And then some of you asked specific questions about what's best for you. After that, we moved on to investment and retirement. I remember that being like a 2-hour meeting. So that was fun. If anybody watched that recording, it's still out there. We talked about credit, right? How does credit work? How do you review your credit score? How do you know your credit report is correct or incorrect? Talked about home purchase in September, right? The ins and outs of it. Most of you have never purchased a home, but a lot of you want to in the not too distant future, just like Tim says. It's like a huge financial thing, right? Outside of grad school and PharmD, this is the biggest financial commitment you're going to make for a long time. So we talked about the ins and outs of that. We went over the home purchase worksheet. Basically, how do we know how much we can afford to pay for a home based on our current income? Talked about taxes. Very small group in that class. No one was really interested on the taxes. What are the ins and outs? How does taxes work? How's it calculated? We talked about insurance, hopefully making a very dark, sometimes dull conversation into a little more lively of a chat, but talking about how much insurance you need, life insurance, disability, property and casualty, liability, professional, business, right? Talking about all that. We moved on to combining finances. Just an idea of if you are not combined finances with a spouse, significant other, or dog, Allison, how can you combine those finances? What are the different options? What's the right way? What's the wrong way? Is there such a thing? Last time, November 9th, we talked about financial independence, right? What is that? What does it mean? How do I get there? How do I achieve that goal? If you missed any of these and you didn't know, they're in Mighty Networks. If you don't know where Mighty Networks is by now, I apologize. But they're all saved in there. So all the recordings are there so you can watch me curse at strangers for an hour at a time. And then today, obviously, we're going to have the wrap up. So
I will say real quick,
I
will say real quick,
yeah.
Robert, and this is going to kind of, you chalk it up to you don't know what you don't know. To me, if I'm, in a position where I think a lot of people are, in this room, the tax is actually going to be really important. Working with kind of the professional in transition, either, going from graduation into a PGY1 or 2, or even going from that. That's typically where we see a lot of pharmacists have the biggest surprises with when they go to file their taxes. So that's actually really important in terms of how you're withholding, where to shelter, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, again, it's a super boring topic, and we do taxes as part of what we provide as a service, not because we love taxes, it's because there's a lot of planning opportunities that are missed when it's not kind of done in-house. And the biggest thing is like student loans. If you have a student loan strategy that sniffs at any type of forgiveness, you should be working with a professional that knows student loans, because by proxy, there's a lot of it, most financial planners don't understand student loans. By proxy, most accountants don't either. And there's potentially big tax consequences. But for what I'm talking about in this is like, as you guys are increasing salary, that's typically a shock in terms of the tax bill that comes at the end of the year. So just a little nugget.
Yep. So now it's going to move on to a little bit of feedback, right? So question and answer. I love getting the group to chat. We'll see if anybody wants to share today. And if not, I'll start picking on people as usual. But basically, did this fellowship meet your expectations, right? I'm sure most of you came in here really not knowing what you were signing up for. You just saw a link for some free stuff. And you're like, let's get in there. But kind of, did anybody want to share? Did this meet expectations? Carol's just waiting for nobody else to click their button.
I guess I would say I didn't have any expectations, but I think I learned coming in. I knew I wanted to learn how to buy a home. I wanted to learn kind of the basics about, what's going to be pertinent to me in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think I got that. So I would say, yes, it met my non-existent expectations.
Good. And for everybody, as we go through this, you're going to be getting a link. So I built a kind of a Google Forms for everybody can answer this. So if you're uncomfortable answering, just like always here, feel free to fill in as much detail as you want in those responses.
And I would say this too is like, to me, it's like being brutally honest is better. Like, I'd rather you punch me in the face now so we can fix it and improve rather than not say anything at all. So if you thought it was garbage and Robert's really annoying and, you would never recommend this to anybody else, then that's really, really good feedback for us to take. So to me, what we're trying to do is, again, find a forum where maybe it's a little bit more of the, hey, like the Facebook mentality where there's a group and there's like-minded people, but then but actually put them in a bottle and go through a similar experience. My experience is that whenever I've gone through like really transformational training, I kind of keep in touch with a lot of those types of people. And if we can kind of build cohorts that are like that and maybe not necessarily reach you from a one-on-one perspective, but we can do it in a group, to me, I think there's a space for that. So if it's, hey, Muddy Networks was garbage, which I kind of got that feedback from other planners that have tested this out, then that's good. If it was, hey, I didn't know where I wanted to be, or I didn't know what we were talking about, that's good as well. So I would say, yeah, permission granted to be brutally honest, because I think that's what we need. Or if it's good, that's good to know too.
Yeah. Was the size appropriate, right? Did anybody have a problem with the size? Were you surprised about how many people we had? Were you expecting fewer? Were you expecting more? Were you expecting more one-on-one stuff? Does anybody have any feelings towards that? A lot of face grimaces and smiles.
So I thought the size was good. As far as like overall, there's a lot of stuff that personally I learned just because a lot of it, until you're there, you really wouldn't learn it. So that stuff was really cool. I think as far as an impact, for a lot of us, I think ask us in 2 to 5 years, and maybe it's going to be like, hey, all that stuff we learned that we took notes on, that, hey, this is the right way to do it, or go through these steps. I think that's when they're going to kind of show the benefit, as opposed to right now where we're like, hey, we really want to get there, but it might be a year, might be 2 years. So I think we'll see the real benefit later on.
Yeah, I definitely think one of the big values of this group is really just kind of shining a flashlight on potholes on a dark road. So you're all traveling in the same direction, but nobody's been down that path yet, right? So the one thing that we're trying to do throughout this is just to kind of show you what some of the pitfalls that other people have fallen into, help you avoid some of their mistakes, so you can learn from other people's lessons without having to experience them yourselves. And yeah, I think, yeah, maybe I'll just be Zooming all of you for a meeting in 2 years and be like, all right, who messed up this? Who messed up that? Who's doing good? Who's doing bad? I'm sure that'll go great.
I think one of the struggles, if I can speak candidly, I think one of the struggles that we have is trying to reconcile how to reach kind of that P4 that maybe transition into a PGY1, PGY2, where you can really have a lot of impact, not just from student loans, but just foundational things as you're kind of stepping into the income, but trying to reconcile the lack of potential income to pay like a decent fee, but also the time, energy, commitment because of that time of your life, which is so busy, one of the things that we hear, and Tim Albrecht can back me up on this over and over again, is, man, I wish I would have done this sooner. Or, man, I wish I would have thought about this a long time ago. So we're trying to figure out like where YFP can potentially fit, where it makes sense. One of the things when I talk to prospective clients is there time and is there a budget to basically commit to working on this? And, my belief is that we can have a lot of impact with that group, but we haven't like solved the Rubik's Cube of what that actually looks like. So I don't know if it is something like this, or if it's a student loan analysis or something else. But Albrecht, do you have anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was reflecting on Austin's comment, because I think what's tricky in my experience working with students, residents, fellows, new practitioners, as well as reflecting back on my own journey, it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know, but you wish you would have known it. And that's a hard thing, because sometimes like you just get in the thick of it, you make some mistakes and you kind of figure it out and you try to do better next time. But other times I do think there's often a good foundation of education that can be laid even before you're in it, that will help you minimize some of those mistakes, or at least optimize that situation while you're through it, even if you haven't experienced it. So, student loans are a great example. I think back to, I always talk about it on the podcast. For me, it felt like monopoly money. It just didn't feel real, right? When I was in school, I signed the notes, took out the loans, didn't understand unsubsidized, didn't understand, interest capitalization. It got real fast when that first payment became due. And obviously I was forced to kind of figure it out from there. And so that was one situation where I felt like once I was in it, I certainly was then motivated to take that topic on and learn, but I wish I would have had a good foundation, prior to then, in terms of understanding student loan repayment options and understanding how interest worked. And I probably would have done a little bit more effort to minimize that indebtedness if I would have understood what it was going to mean when I got out. Same thing with home buying. I mean, Tim Baker's spot on. I've gone through the process a few times. I think I've made a mistake every time I've gone through the process. It's gotten maybe lesser of a mistake each time, but wish I would have had that foundation. So I think we're really trying to figure out that right point of laying the foundation as a student, as a resident, as a new practitioner, as a fellow, however you want to define it, even if that may mean, as Austin shared, that the benefits are reaped, a few years down the road. And that's hard, because I think you're trying to often present information and make it as real as you possibly can and relevant as you possibly can, but you may not even be yet in the thick of it. So any feedback you all have kind of addressing that, and where the content was spot on, and even for those situations where you maybe weren't in it yet, how it either was presented that was effective, or how it could be presented that would be more effective for when you are in those situations in the future.
We lost Baker.
I'll be honest, I don't have a direct answer to your question, but in the midst of everything that Tim Baker was saying, I was wondering if you had tried this or thought about this. Like, perhaps you talked about how you've partnered with a bunch of schools and you've spoken at different schools of pharmacy. I wonder if there's an opportunity there to maybe have a course at the end of P4, or during the middle of P4, where things are a little bit less busy and you're prepping for, residency and things like that, where you could do this over 8 or 10 weeks, where you could get your foot in the door with those folks.
Yeah, Brittany, I really appreciate that. And I think this is an area where this group, if you have ideas on education that would have resonated with you in school in terms of what and when, that would be super helpful. So I'll give you a couple ideas here of what we've done. So we've certainly done a lot of what I would call one-off sessions. So like a APHA ASP luncheon type of session, or a student organization sponsored event, or perhaps something at capstone, graduation, white coat types of things. And those are good, but they're often, one time. At Ohio State, I teach a 3-credit-hour online personal finance elective semester long. And I can tell you that's a whole lot better, because we get 15 weeks to really dig in deep. But obviously it's an elective opportunity, and those that are motivated, are in, and those that maybe aren't, or have competing responsibilities or schedules aren't in there. But Brittany, I think what you're saying is kind of where we've been brainstorming the last, actually recently last week, I had a meeting with someone about trying to roll out something that can be more longitudinal and more on demand for pharmacy students. Because I firmly believe, and you guys tell me if you feel differently, that what would be helpful as a P1 could be different than a P2, a P3, and a P4, and even as you're transitioning out. So, one of the talks that I often do with first year pharmacy students is called an anatomy of a student loan, a real snoozer. I try to make it entertaining. But I firmly believe if you can really understand the construct of a loan when you're a P1, you've got a better shot of making some decisions that might help your situation when you're in active repayment. Whereas if I spend an hour talking with P1s about like loan forgiveness and loan repayment strategies, they have so many other things to worry about, right? What's in front of them in pharmacy school, that is 4 years off into the future. So I think I could be wrong. Your feedback would be really helpful here. There's a longitudinal approach to education, specifically in pharmacy school, that can be rolled out and be designed in a way that people can interact with it in a way that their schedules would allow, and that they could also go back and interact with it. And that's one of the challenges I have with, I love doing live sessions, but if you're there, great. If you're not, you miss it. And often, there may be something you want to go back, when a year or 2 years later, you're like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about this. I'd love to go back and watch it. And I think that could be an advantage of that type of medium as well. So I would love, and I know, Robert, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but any feedback this group has on your experiences while you were in school and what would have been helpful and when, that would be really informative to us as we continue to try to reach out to more colleges.
Something I was thinking about is maybe considering having like a brand ambassador at the different schools. So I'm a current HSPL resident at Cone Health, and I know like people who are interested in admin in pharmacy school are usually also interested in the business side of things. And so some of the topics that we talk about in this fellowship, I do have some baseline knowledge of. And so, having those kind of people, like attract those kind of people, maybe, set up a deal where if they help kind of enroll people into programs that you guys do, then in return they get some kind of more one-on-one sessions to help with their own career planning or like financial planning, things like that. I think people who are like interested in like admin leadership, they're always looking for more leadership opportunities and things like that to get involved or even to network. So those people are easy people to recruit to do this kind of things. And that way, you have a student essentially telling other students to look into things like this. And another thing I just felt like I liked about this program is, like if I never set time aside to learn about finance, I'm never gonna learn about finance. Residency is so busy. This like 1 hour every other Monday, it's like the time I set aside, like, okay, I can dedicate 2 hours a month to like better my financial future. So I do like this structure of having like set time where we do things and not just having everything on demand, because I feel like a lot of times on demand things tend to get pushed to the back burner and like people don't go visit it.
I would second that with the accountability perspective. Like I similarly think that on-demand things are really nice for when you go back to them. But if you don't, for me personally, if I don't have some way of like keeping me accountable to do something and have other people depending on me to do that, or like have somebody else expecting me to get something done on a certain timeline, it like, unless I'm super motivated with like nothing else to do, it probably won't get done.
Yeah, that's the main reason this is live, because I know y'all are busy. We're competing with so many different things. I mean, I'm competing with dinner time for Carol. I'm competing with nap time and game time for Allison. I'm competing with cutting boards with Austin. I'm competing with life for everybody. But like kind of having that designated time to at least you missed something, right? Hey, at least I know it's this Monday. We're supposed to do this. This is a thing. And if you missed it, cool. You want to go back. I know some of you at least have gone back and watched the videos afterwards, but you're at least aware. And if it's a show on TV that I don't watch that often, I'm not going to stay up to date. But when The Mandalorian comes out on Friday, like that shit's happening. So like you're ready. All right. How did y'all feel about sharing information? So obviously that first meeting was like super awkward. And then I got a nice little nucleus of people that would feel obligated to chat. Carol, thanks. And I loved having that around, but like, is it hard? Is it just, you don't know what to say? Do people feel like you don't know enough to say enough, or kind of what's the vibe there? I'd like to hear from somebody I don't ever hear from. Lindsay, tell me things.
Well, I was thinking and gathering my thoughts, but one of the things that I was trying to find out which one it should line up under the questions was just that I appreciate you being like the moderator of the like presentations, because I feel like you're very engaging and your voice isn't like monotone like mine. So like you bring people in and you try to like, you always pick on Allison, which is funny. At least I think so. But now I've already forgot what your question was.
Is it hard to share? Yeah.
Oh no, I think it seemed like at least from my perspective, I would always be like texting Allison what my thoughts were. But if I had anything that I felt like I needed to share to the group, I felt comfortable sharing, and I felt like other people that were super gung-ho about sharing their ideas would always share them, and usually I wouldn't have to say because it was kind of the same as what I had been thinking. So that's why I don't talk as much, because I'm like, oh, someone else said what I had thought. So I'm usually in the corner. And I'm also eating dinner usually too, so I don't talk as much.
That's the cause when we're having these at like 8 p.m. Eastern. Everybody's doing something at that time frame, so I understand. And I do know, since we picked 2020 grads, right? So we're picking people that are all in similar situations. So the questions, the comments, the concerns are all going to be somewhat similar. So if somebody says something like, "Cool, yeah, I'm on that boat." Oh man, yeah, I'm really glad somebody asked about why I can't do repayee if I heard this and that, right? So that's really helpful. Is there like a better medium for that? Like, would this be better if we had like an active chat going on the side, so you didn't have to actually call out the video, or is it just repetitive? Like you don't want to just say the same stuff?
For me, it would be just repeating what someone else said. But I think people should always feel comfortable to use the chat, and I think you at least said in previous meetings, and I think all of us are having a lot of Skype meetings, that we should know we'd be able to, if we had questions that we didn't feel like we could interject and someone else was talking, to put them in the chat box. At least I think most people would.
Yeah, we use the chat box from time to time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Most important question, and it's already been peeled off there, but basically, how would you rate the quality of the instructor? That's obviously the top of the charts here. Where can I improve as this, right? So if we're going to do this course again and again, kind of where do you see the flaws in the way that I kind of ran meetings?
You can do a better job of staying on topic. I wasn't even here, and I know that's probably what happened, but
for sure I got off topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing about finances, y'all, okay, if I could take a little tangent here, everything is intertwined, okay? So getting off topic is staying on topic, right? As we talk about finances, hey, we're talking about credit today. Credit leads to everything, right? We're talking about home purchase. The value of your home is going to affect every other bit of your finances. So it's all connected. There is no tangent. We just dug into a different crevice of the financial architecture there. But yeah, anybody have any kind of glaring holes, tiny holes, little thing that I should just know that I don't know? Like, has my hair been spiked up the wrong way all season?
Something that I was just kind of thinking of with the way that these questions were presented is it maybe would be nice. Like I liked how you had presentations ready. I think to like take the learning a step further and maybe start to like apply some of those, having some like more activities to do within a session, or have something worked up before a session. I know it kind of gets tricky because obviously we are all so busy, but I just think like actually implementing things is where the knowledge that you learn about starts to stick. So I think that maybe blending a few more like real life applications for us. I feel like with the software that you had us use, the Right Capital, I feel like we kind of like used it and set it up at the beginning and then didn't really touch it again. And I'm not really sure like how we would have incorporated that more, but I guess it just kind of felt like we were, given all these tools and then we'd randomly have some activities to do. But if there was something like more consistently to help us like grow and move along on the whole trajectory, I think that would maybe be useful.
Yeah, I definitely think we could have integrated more of those worksheets, right? So we had one for like home purchase that was really valuable. We had one for the fire there last time that actually allowed you to kind of play with some numbers and do some things. Incorporating those more is definitely, thank you, a great thing. And then yeah, we didn't really mess with Right Capital too much. That's mostly for my distaste in Right Capital. We made a big switch to a different planning software, and I kind of don't like that. But yeah, I think we definitely could have integrated that more often and kind of shown where you can input these things. And yeah, I'll definitely try to use that more in the future. That's a great one.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, for those activities, we can use breakout rooms so people who maybe not feel as comfortable speaking in front of a big group can share with like a small group. And if we have like the same breakout rooms for the same group of people throughout the semester, I think that's going to build a little bit more camaraderie between like that small group of people. And then, maybe one person from a group can contribute to the larger conversation and help everyone participate.
I like the idea of that. I just don't understand how that's going to function, right? So if I had a hard enough time, you guys were working, right? So I don't know where that extra time is. And if I'm having a 60-minute meeting and I consistently ran like 97 minutes or something, like where is that fitting into this meeting? And then would you all do homework? Like who thought about me throughout the week? Like who is sitting here not you. So who's sitting here on like Wednesday afternoon thinking, oh yeah, man, Robert said he was going to upload that thing to Mighty Networks. Let me jump on there and look at it. So I don't know if it's really happening. Like maybe I'm just a pessimist over here. But like when would you want these?
I guess this kind of goes along with like, if you want kind of better quality for the program, the people that are in it just have to put in but more quality work, and that includes us as the participants. Yeah. And so it's like a vicious cycle or just a feedback. But I mean, I think we'll at the end of it get more out of it, kind of like what Allison said about more applications. But yeah, I do agree, like time is going to be a constraining factor. So I don't really have a good solution to it.
No, I like it. Yeah, we never use the breakout rooms function in here. So that's a good one. Okay. Were there any big objectives, any big learning points that we didn't touch on that you really hoping we were going to get to? As we worked through this process, we started with, hey, we knew we were going to have 12 meetings. And I knew what the first one was. I knew what the last one was. There's a couple in there sprinkled. And I kind of started giving you options on what we wanted to talk about. Were there any big topics that we didn't get to, that we'd never talked? Cool. I'm perfect again. Thank you very much. Always love that. Tim, are you talking to us?
Salary negotiation. Did you do that one?
We didn't get to salary negotiation, and that was kind of by just function of time. A lot of time, by the time we were salary negotiation would have been super valuable. Everyone was already in their positions.
It's one of those things where, again, most pharmacists, when we talk about, especially like that are coming out, it's like, I can't negotiate. I'm just happy to have a job. It's nonsense, to be quite frank. And even I tell clients, if we swing and miss and completely strike out on everything that we're kind of countering, it's still an iteration under your belt. So it's definitely something that I think if you can do and be able to advocate for yourself from a compensation packet, perspective, which is really hard for a lot of people to do. But if you can learn to do that, it's going to better your career. So I'm a big proponent of it. We've seen it work in a profession which we know is a bit crowded in markets, and the saturation is there, the incomes are flat if not going down. but I definitely think it's something, especially if you are in this group that is residency trained, you have a lot to offer. You have to kind of, negotiate from that mindset. So I would put that at the top of the list if, as a bystander.
Yeah, that's a good one. Scan the room. Everybody's on mute still.
So how do you like randomly call out people that aren't either blacked out or muted? I think that's what we should be doing, right?
Yeah, only sometimes. I get a lot of shouts from the dark, or I'll get some emoji hand claps. I get some chats coming in here.
I just put a plug for, we did an episode, if you guys didn't talk negotiation, we did an episode on the podcast not too long ago about negotiation. So if you want the quick summary and don't have to listen to Robert, episode 166 is a good one.
Yeah, I think that's actually something I could have done better as well, is actually like kind of plugged other YFP resources. We didn't plug a lot of resources. We have like, hey, you can go here, and we pull up websites for things, but I think additional YFP stuff would have been super valuable, especially podcasts, since we have like so many now. Okay.
I just thought about this actually. I don't know if other people did this, but maybe 1 or 2 times in the middle between sessions, I had questions about things. So when I was figuring out job stuff, I had questions about salary and things, and I had questions about RSUs. So I sent an email to Robert, which I don't know if other people did that, but I did. And I feel like it might be helpful if there were office hours, which can get sticky, right? Because then you start doing independent work for people. But just those quick one-offs, I think, could be really helpful.
Yeah. So I thought about doing office hours at one point. I kind of just threw that out there, like, hey, yeah, shoot me an email if you have any questions. And a couple people did. And then the easiest fix was always, hey, like show up early. Right. So just like we did with Brittany, basically just like, hey, show up a few minutes early, we can have this conversation. So it doesn't turn it into a full kind of one-on-one session. It doesn't get too far out of bounds from a timing perspective. But yeah, I think office hours may be valuable. If we start treating this as a Freudian slip there, treating this more like a class, right? If I was teaching a class and we were going over these things, there would be office hours to come in and get clarification on things and to follow up on details. So I think maybe that would be more valuable. But which of the meetings was most valuable? I know we kind of already asked that question earlier, but now we've thought about it more. Did any of them stand out as most or least valuable?
I personally liked the home buying one, and I don't remember the other one, but I really liked the home one.
I know I get super jazzed up for the home buying conversation, so that one's always fun. And we get to pull up Zillow and just talk about where random people live, which is fun. Any of the meetings that I sat through that were like, this is just dog shit, like I wasted an hour here? No, Cassie has one. Oh, I feel like you're talking, but I can't hear you. Does someone else hear her? No? Okay, cool. Sorry. Feel free to chat. Okay. Some of the big questions here. So like, would you recommend YFP to friends or colleagues, right? And if so, what would you tell them, right? I want to kind of hear, if you're telling somebody what YFP is and what we do, kind of what is it? So actually, like, Brandon, is your mic on? Brandon's actually a good example. Brandon, like, how would you pitch us to people? You have a different perspective on this.
So I haven't been too active in the fellowship just because my story. So I actually started YFP planning right around the same time that the fellowship started. I had applied for the fellowship, and then you said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I signed up with YFP. So I've been doing it for the past couple months now, and I've gotten a lot out of it. It's really helped me. I'm in a residency right now in New Mexico. So it's really helped me get organized and get on my feet. And kind of as both Tim said, just a lot of those transitioning students who are coming out into the real world just that don't have that I guess just that knowledge or the skill set, just like kind of get everything in place. That's really helped me put all that into place and just, like I said, get organized. I'm trying to get my girlfriend to sign up. I've been telling her about it. I've given her the Seven Figure Pharmacist book. I've read it myself like 3 times already. So I gave it to her and I was like, okay, before you sign up and before you do a discovery meeting, you have to read this book first, because that's going to tell you everything you need to know about like kind of what they do. And I've really harped on the fee only, like kind of how that works versus regular financial planning. And I think that's really sold her and several other my friends who I've talked to IFP up to. So I've gotten a lot out of it so far, and I think it's a very, very valuable thing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Brandon, it's good to see you. I remember a conversation a few months ago, and I left inspired. I mean, you were so fired up about like getting on the path towards achieving your financial goals, and your energy. I felt like I was feeding off of it. So glad to hear it's been a good couple months getting started.
Yeah, it's been going really well. Thank you.
Anybody not want to recommend us? Like, who's just shown up this last time to see what more of a dumpster fire? No? Okay. Feel free to chat me privately if you're just embarrassed to embarrass me. And then, so we've already gotten a lot of kind of suggestions for improvements. But before I move on to ask the Tims kind of questions, anything else anybody wants to add about how we can improve this or grow this? Because, you know, in the future, somebody you know is going to be in this program. We want to make sure they get as much value that they can.
Can I ask a question to the group? Robert?
Sure.
Is it, I guess my question is it worth it? So like in the space that you guys currently reside, you know, is this something that we should, because the background of this question is, you know, we would offer comprehensive financial planning at a deep discount. So one-on-one planning at a deep discount. So fellow residents make about 1/3 of what a typical pharmacist makes. So we would say, hey, because of that, we'll offer one-on-one financial planning at 1/3 of the rate that we would basically charge. And we did that for a period of time, and then we gave it up because those were the clients that were not engaged, you know, were not particularly valuing their service. So is this Rubik's Cube that we're trying to figure out, working with kind of the pharmacists in transition, is it worth our time, worth our energy? I think we've identified, I think it's worth it from the planning perspective. And again, like where you're at, but, you know, is it something that, you know, again, most financial planners, they work with people that have $250,000, $500,000, and they'll say to a lot of people in this room, well, come back and talk to me when you have $250,000 or $500,000. That's when I can actually help you. And I think that's nonsensical. But, you know, from where you guys sit in this kind of experience, is this worth our time to pursue? Or should we just say, hey, the one-off thing that we do is a student loan analysis, and then we'll see you, you know, post-residency? What's the feedback on that? Because again, like from our perspective, our mission is to, you know, help inspire pharmacists to achieve financial freedom. That's our kind of overall mission. I think we can do that at, you know, essentially every level, whether it's a blog or a podcast or something like that. But from a business perspective, we have to know that it makes sense as well. So Robert's time is worth a lot of money, and what he's doing, you know, day to day. And I want to make sure that, you know, are we spinning our wheels with this, or is this something that we can just continue to refine and improve? Just kind of want to get the temperature of the room in that regard.
So I might answer the question in a roundabout way.
Go for
but
it.
I kind of use the whole program as a whole as a tool. I don't know, like if you were to ask me, hey, right off, like, hey, is the whole program, is it worth so-called price? Parts of it I'd say weren't. Parts of it I'd say I'd pay more for. For instance, like student loans. I've seen like all the podcasts over it. Like you go back to it, you know the schools are there. So like we talk about it in this class, and it's like, oh hey, I need to know more about this, or let's go back to it. So I'd use it. And then the home buying side, like you learn about Iberia, you learn about those different resources. Then whenever it comes like time to buy the house, you're like, cool, I know there's a podcast over. So you go, you read the script over, like you listen to the podcast again. There was parts of it that are really awesome. So I use it as a tool to get there, but as a whole, since it's such broad topics, it's hard to say that it's worth it as a whole plan, if that makes sense.
So financial planning, but not comprehensive financial planning. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. Kind of like, I'm just trying to think like value wise, like P1 year, maybe that like Christmas break time, or even after like the summer after your P1 year. If I could have told my P2 self about student loans, like I didn't know anything. I racked up more debt without seeing it than I ever knew. Like, and it seemed like, and maybe this is part on the school's process, like they're really good at teaching you about pharmacy stuff, but it comes to student loans, it's like, you'll be fine. And I just felt like it was a complete, just kind of never knew it till it was too late. But in the same sense, your P2 year, probably not looking at buying a house. So maybe like breaking it up that way, I think it for sure will show its use.
Yeah, one of the problems with kind of piecemealing it out though is, again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know what is going to be super valuable for you. And yeah, no one's buying, hopefully not many people are buying a house, in their second year, but it's not knowing what kind of mess you're going to get into before you get there, right, is difficult. But yeah, we definitely had some conversations about kind of offering it piecemeal, which is why we have the student loan analysis, right? So for most people, that's that pressing issue, and that's that main thing. So that's where we go. But yeah, Allison, did you have something you wanted to answer for? Yeah.
I guess from my perspective, the finances and like finally entering like the adult world of, needing to financially plan for everything was a huge stressor on top of everything else this year. So having a group setting that put me like with peers that were in a similar situation to me, that opened up a space where like it could be discussed. And then also like I think it put just enough of a personal spin on it where not only could I learn from others, but like if I had a specific question to something that I really needed to know, it was like just enough of a good setting where I felt like I could still get that information, along with like the bigger group. So personally, I think that for me, it works out really well in that it provided information in a timely manner in like a good learning environment, and then with just enough personal spin on it where I feel like I still got enough out of it without needing to go down like the one-on-one service route. But then who's not to say that like having all the foundation now, I think makes it more likely for, more targeted planning down the road, would maybe open up like that one-on-one option as being even more lucrative, I guess, like later, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. All right. Any last thing before we pass it over to the Tims? Going once, going twice. All right. So now it's time to ask the Tims. So we found some random photos online. Obviously, Tim Baker maintains his online image better. And Tim Ulbrich has a lot of snapshot photos of him across the web, mid-phrase. But now's an opportunity to ask questions, right? So we've now spent, 45 minutes asking you to tell us things. What questions do you have for a pharmacist, an educator, parents, adults in the room, how to grow a sweet beard, how to cough real nice, really kind of what questions do you have for the Tims? So this is what the tax meeting was like, by the way. It was just like that quietness. To get started, Tims, do you have any other questions for the group about them?
I guess the question I would if we don't have anything for Tim and I, would just be where do you guys go from here? Where is this something that you feel that that potentially jumpstart your financial plan, or is this something that you put on the shelf and revisit when something catches fire, or it's like, oh, Robert talked about this? Is this something that again affects change for you, or was this just one of the courses that you take and good to go? So where do you guys kind of see kind of your financial journey going from here? And it could be like, hey, I just feel better educated, I'm good to go. But has it sparked anything, or just what's your thought?
So as far as being sparked, I'd say it sparked a lot of things. For instance, IDR repayment plan, learned that from this, doing it, real cool stuff. Speaking with Iberia Banks because of pharmacist loans, awesome stuff. You tell your friends around you about that thing, and they're like, hey, this is too good to be true. It's a real deal. Sparked that, which is awesome. And then things like the insurance talk, HSA, health savings accounts, like open enrollment came back around. I was like, hey, I know about this cool thing, the HSA, it's a thing, it's offered, using that. So I'd say it sparked a lot of things, to where when the time came to do that stuff, it was like, cool, I know a little bit about that stuff, and really kind of started to implement it. So I'd say it sparked it for sure.
Awesome. Love the actionable steps. That's great.
Love the specific items there, Austin. I mean, the HSA, the Iberia, the student loan repayment. I mean, just the tangible takeaways there. I would add to Tim's comments, and Robert, as an educator, I know you gotta have a longer pause than that when you throw out a question of the group. So we're still trying to figure out what that means on Zoom, how long you should wait. But if people have questions, still throw them out there. We're happy to jump in. The other thing I'd be interested in hearing from the group would be, topic ideas. Like, are there certain things, for those of you that are familiar or quasi-familiar with kind of what we've been doing on the podcast and the blog, are there things that are of interest to you that you'd love to learn about that you feel like we either haven't tackled, or could do in more depth, or could do in a different way, or could take it a different angle based on the things that you've learned? We would love to hear those ideas as well. And actually, I'm looking at these photos. I don't even know where that bottom middle photo is from, Robert. It's kind of scary. It's like some faux, like, green screen background somewhere. I don't even know what that is. So.
Yeah, I was actually looking for pictures of Baker, and I just typed in your financial pharmacist, Tim, and it was just a bunch of photos of you. So Tim Baker has his old script photos were the big ones, but I don't know where this is at. But
that's in the actually Columbus. That's in Columbus somewhere. Yeah, even though I was living in Baltimore. Fun fact. Yeah.
Are there any individual questions that people have that have come to mind?
I guess I have a question, just because you had been through, I guess, an admin residency. Just kind of what are some tips or strategies for like building a habit of, keeping an eye on your finances and investing time to learn about things when you're so busy. I mean, this year I felt like I could barely have time to breathe and sleep and things like that. And so my money is the last thing on my mind. But I also know that that's important. So I guess just any tips you have for busy residents.
And you're currently in your admin residency, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So my first tip would be give yourself some grace. Like your pace of life is not going to always be the same. I can promise you that. So, I think while you have lots of things, I'm sure, that are competing for your time already, and you have lots of needs, the fact that you're making the commitment to be here, that you're keeping this top of mind, even if that means you're not perhaps reading as much as you'd like or listening to podcasts or whatever, give yourself some grace. You're in a transient phase of life, even if it feels like it's never going to end. And it will come to an end, at some point. And I think you'll find that the habits and behaviors that you're building right now, even if they feel fairly small or insignificant, will matter as you make that transition. I would really encourage you, find the medium, just from a keeping things top of mind, find the medium that really speaks most to you, and try to, at least as you get started, drown out some of the other noise. I think one of the hard parts about this topic, or really insert any other topic, for me, I love learning about leadership topics, how to become a more effective leader. But when you open up that box, I mean, there's a million different ways that you can go. And sometimes you got to kind of pick a lane and, pick a book or a podcast or a blog or something you're going to follow as sort of your go-to. And then you commit to that one thing, and then you build from there as time allows. And I think similarly on personal finance, I often feel, as I pull up my podcast player myself, like I feel FOMO with all the podcasts that are out there that I want to listen to that I just never get to. And that can feel overwhelming, such that sometimes I just need to delete some of them so I can singularly focus on one thing and inch things forward. One of my favorite books is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And if you never have read it before, I'd recommend it. And I think it's primarily written, if I remember correctly, in kind of the context of behavioral changes around physical fitness or weight loss. But I saw a very direct correlation to the compound effect with your personal finances. And the thing I took away from there, which I think is true with your personal finances, it's true as a parent, as a spouse, it's true as a leader in your organization, as an employee, is what's one small thing that you can do to continue to improve. And that one thing may not feel very significant, but you look back a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, and the compound effect of that is incredible. So don't get discouraged in the moment. I know it's easy for me to say, I'm not in the weeds on it like you are, but keep doing things like this. Find a book or a resource that you want to go to throughout the rest of your administrative residency, and then trust when time becomes more available, you'll certainly be able to fill that to a desire that probably meets your interest and need. I feel for our admin residents every day, though. I mean, they're taking full-time credit course load, 13, 14 credit hours while they're completing PGY1, PGY2 residency. And I question sometimes if it's healthy for them to be doing all of that at once. So you're under a lot of stress.
I question that too sometimes.
What else?
On your guys' budgets and your own personal budgets, what is one of your areas that you always have a hard time cutting back and spending? And what are some of your strategies for limiting yourself, not limiting yourself, but sticking to your budget and not
Dining
getting
out.
too crazy?
I eat out a lot. I have a $150 brisket coming in a couple days. What's my strategy for fixing that? I'd make more money. It's not going to stop.
That's a good question.
I personally don't budget anymore. I don't do a kind of a zero base budget. I guess we kind of do more of the no budget. My wife and I, we sit down and we built out, and the same thing that we do with our clients is kind of build out a savings plan. So every month, you know, after we're doing kind of the 401k, the HSA, the 529 stuff for the kids, we put a sizable chunk of money into an Ally accounts. So now that our emergency fund is funded and all of the, you know, kind of that baseline is there, we have separate accounts, you know, just like a business would have for different things that they're spending money on, with whether it's marketing or IT or whatever. And I think it's probably like $2,000 that we put into Ally every month, and then we basically divide it up into our goals. So if you go back to the scripture plan in 3 questions, we've identified those are the things that are most important to us, and that's what we fund. So, you know, some of those things we spend down, and then we basically, you know, refund some of those things, or we fund it again. Some of those things, they just are there, and then when we get there, we basically turn it off. So we're less about, and I wouldn't say that we are frivolous. I think we're probably, you know, we do eat out and we spend money, and you know, we just moved into this new house, so we're spending you know, more money than I think. But it really comes back to that intentionality behind the plan. So we're saying, hey, if travel pre-COVID is a big thing, if giving's a big thing, if, you know, working on the house is a big thing, whatever, you know, if it's saving for a Tesla, we're being very, very intentional towards those goals. So we're less in the weeds about, well, I'm like overspending on dining out, which we probably are, but I'm doing that proverbial pay yourself first, right? So everything in reality is noise. But we create a feeling of scarcity in our household. So when it's the first of the month, like, we're ready to get paid because we're shaving off a big chunk to go to Ally, and we're ready. So I think that kind of compresses some of our savings as well, or some of our spending as well. So there's not anything that I can think of like, hey, I really want that. But if there is, then we put a plan in place to kind of get there. So, I mean, I could say, you know, dining out's probably a big thing. Travel, when we could travel. You know, I like brown liquor, so sometimes I'll buy a bottle of bourbon or whatever. But to me, like, those are the things that, you know, we should be spending our money on. So it's not about, to me, it's not about taking away. You know, a lot of people's like, budget sucks, I never want to do it. It's more about just lining up what you should be spending your money on, and kind of getting out of your own way so you can't spend it on crap that you don't need. And to me, I think that scarcity mindset of, hey, you know, I'm going to basically pay these bills first, goes a long way. And I could tell you, like, I've been in places in my life where, when I was in the Army at West Point, it was like YOLO, you know, who knows? You live for today, not tomorrow. To me, the hard part about all of this stuff is, and I say this, Robert's probably heard me say this, and Tim has probably heard me say this 1,000 times. It's about threading the needle between taking care of yourself today and your future self. And if you're not feeling that push and pull, then we're probably doing something wrong. So to me, yeah, I think doing a zero-based budget and all that is important, especially as you're starting off and you can kind of get a handle on your finances. But I think it can also be, to me, it's about engagement. The more you're engaged, and Tim talks about grace, you give yourself some grace, and you're like, hey, you're not going to be perfect. Even when I was doing a zero-based budget, I don't think I ever had a perfect month. Something always came up. But if those something's kept coming up over and over again, I'm like, all right, well, we need to plan for that. Like, you know, I always say tires on your car is not an emergency. We know we're going to have wear and tear on a car. I know that my wife is going to crash the car. That's what she does. So we just need a plan around that. So, you know, we can afford it and not reach for the credit card. So I went on a tangent, and Robert said that's okay. But to me, it's you know, I think what we try to do from a budget perspective, or what I want us to do, is, you know, give you some structure, give you some accountability. And if you do have, you know, some of those, you know, points where you're more susceptible, then, to kind of give you that tough love, that encouragement, and point you back to those goals that you set out. Like, hey, this is why we're having building a financial plan. This is why we're doing it, because you want to take that, European trip for a month, or, have that vacation home or whatever. And to me, that's what basically solidifies the engagement and really gets to where you want to go. The beautiful thing about where you guys are at in life is that, and this is one of the reasons I really like working with young professionals versus like people in their 50s, 60s, because like the world is your oyster, and it sounds so corny, but just a little bit of, thing, it goes back to the compound effect. The little bit of planning now can improve the decisions down the road. I remember Tim and I went and spoke to USC, like we spoke to the whole pharmacy school. And I remember talking to the P4s, and I'm like, you guys are in the best spot because you guys have earning potential, but you also have time. And with that, you can do so many great things. And if you're 50, there's some people that I work with in my past firm, and Robert can kind of probably speak to this as well. They literally couldn't save or invest enough money to be able to do the things that they wanted to do because they just didn't have the time to do that. So it's a great question. I think you should care about the details, but eventually you're going to get to a point as long as you're taking care of business, saving, paying yourself, being intentional to your plan, everything else is going to be noise. But I think taking those building block steps are going to be really, really important.
Robert, I'm glad you recorded that, because that was like 10 minutes of dropping budget wisdom right there. I mean, that was good stuff. Seriously, it was. I think that, we talk a lot about on the podcast when we speak the zero-based budget, and, Jess and I tried to live by that for a while. It served its purpose. I think it's a really effective tool from a transitionary standpoint where you're trying to wrap your arms around all this. We've kind of taken more of an approach recently, what Tim Baker just outlined. And I think it's given us a lot of freedom as there has been a little bit more margin. And I think what Tim said, which really has resonated with Jess and I, Ramit Sethi talks about it in his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, about having money dials. And find those things that mean the most to you, that allow you to live that rich life and find that balance between living for today and taking care of your future self, and dial those things up, invest those things, and find the things that you don't give a crap about and dial them down. And so for us, a couple examples of that, like experiences and time with our boys, coffee and wine, I'm all in. Let's spend whatever we need to spend on those three things. Cars, I could give a crap about my car. If you saw my car, you'd probably be embarrassed. And Jess is getting embarrassed by it recently, which means it's probably time to go. So, I think it's finding those things and then finding the system that allows you to implement those. And, some things you have more control over others. I always say one of the things that we tend to kind of month by month continues to creep up is our grocery budget. Well, I have 4 boys. It's just the reality, and it's going to get worse. Like, I need to accept that and get over it and move on, and figure out what are some other things that we can do that we could focus on, and obviously other areas, that may not necessarily have a direct impact or where we can change as much. So I always tell people, when it comes to budgeting, the best system is the system that works for you, allows you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, and that's going to keep you going month to month. So if you hear a zero-based budget and you think that's a great exercise, but I'm already exhausted, I'm not going to keep up with it, find a different system. If you hear about great electronic tools like Mint or YNAB or other things, and you're like, nope, I like my Excel spreadsheet, then keep doing your Excel spreadsheet. Like, whatever is the system that's going to keep you moving forward, with the realization that the budget should be the execution of the goals that you're trying to achieve and the way that you're going to do that.
All right, I think that's a wonderful place to kind of wrap up this. I really just want to say thanks, right? You guys have been sticking this through. Most of you have been here to a lot of the meetings. You had to miss things. I kind of I'm so sorry, I'm going to miss this meeting this week. It's fine. You guys are busy. Thank you for putting up with me, for putting up with Kim mostly. I know she's terrible in these meetings. She just sits there. Oh, hey there. Oh, sorry. But I hope that you guys did learn some things. I hope you did have some takeaways. I hope you got value from these meetings. I am going to send out the questionnaire afterwards. So if there's any other deep, dark secrets you want to share about how terrible we did, please put it in there. Like Tim Baker said, like be as mean and nasty as you need to. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I guarantee it. But it's really just going to help us grow and improve, right? Criticism is best when we can get it from people that actually understand what we've been trying to do here. So if you have any questions after this, anything outside of the survey, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm going to leave Mighty Networks up for a little while. Not that anybody used it, but feel free to throw some things in there. Brittany gives me claps every once in a while in there, which is nice. If there's anything else, yeah, just shoot us an email and we'll get back to you. And if I never see the rest of you again, good luck in life. Stay safe for the remainder of 2020 and take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.